Hello viewers, I'm jumping back into this week's Daily Race C, such an amazing race. Currently 77th in the world in the time trial, let's try and improve that. And my first attempt at improvement came in at an 8 minute 12.3, 1.5 seconds off my personal best. My next attempt came in at, well, this, turning left into the wall, and my third attempt was an 8 minute 10.9, so 1/10 away. Before this lap, I was heading towards an 8 minute 9, before turning left into the wall once again. And any Charles Leclerc fans out there will be very familiar with this phrase. I am so stupid. And unfortunately the stupidity continued as I, well, just basically forgot how to drive, not once, but twice, here having a nice meeting with Barrier. Before eventually I managed to actually complete a decent lap, eventually coming up to the line to complete an 8 minute 9.5, which I was very happy with. 8:09.5, that'll do. I ain't doing any more laps. 43rd in the world. Pretty happy with that, I must say. Alright, time for a new livery. Let's jump into a race. Before we jump into the next race though, I just want to give a massive shout out to Fusa there with a qualifying time of 1 hour. And CX Morris with 2 hours 11 minutes and 10 seconds. I respect the commitment to stay on the track that long. Never mind an hour, I wasn't even able to stay on the track for 1 minute in my first race. Wow. That's a great start. Yes, Steve, that is a great start. So now I had to fight back through the field and see what results I could salvage. So there were many cars crashing off. So I wasn't the only one. I was in good company at least. And eventually here we are on the end of lap number 1. See cars just spinning off left, right and centre. Making my way back to 13th. Scotty here with a crash back to 12th. And then what's next? Up behind this Icelandic guy. He was really trying to get out of the way for me. I was like, okay, thank you very much. I'll take that position quite gladly. And then we were behind this Lexus, and I was trying a move down towards the foxhole, which is a very perilous place to try and overtake. But, you know, around the Nordschliefe, you've got to really go for it in the most awkward of positions. Well, you don't have to, but I kind of, well, it's the idea of racing, isn't it, to try to overtake. Couldn't quite make it happen there. Eventually did make a mistake though, going towards Bergwerk, and I managed to get the pass done for P10 before then catching up to a pair of stragglers here with penalties. This guy was a little bit slow, so I struck and had my chance to overtake, and I took it. Up the inside we go into P9, and then this guy in the McLaren had a penalty, so we took P8 right at the end. So it was overall a disastrous result, but a good little fight back, given that we went all the way down into P16 at one point. Got back to P8. It was quite a fun race, to be honest. It was quite fun. Apart from the bit where I crashed at the beginning, if you remember that. I don't know if you remember that. And then in the post-race menu, I tried to save the replay, but the game had other ideas. Don't know what's up with this game. It just wants to crash every 5 minutes, just like me. Now, into the next race. I was hoping to not crash every 5 seconds or every 5 minutes, or whatever it was. Once again, starting towards the front, this time actually on pole position. I was under a lot of pressure from Max Power in the Grello Porsche. And so even in the Supra, which is, to be fair, the OP car, I had to try and keep my cool and not make any glaring mistakes. Now I had pressure from not only one car, 2 cars. We had Midnight Pumpkin in the Nissan GTR. So I was under double attack here. And onto the Dottinger, this was quite interesting. You can see the top speed prowess of the Toyota Supra. It's such a hard car to overtake. These guys behind me in the Porsche and the Nissan both have the tow, of course. I mean, the Nissan has the double tow, but they're barely able to get past. In fact, it took a bit of a bump draft for the Porsche now to brake alongside. I temporarily go into second place, but then the Nissan gives me a push and I'm back into first. And so it is so hard for the other cars to overtake this Toyota. But even with that advantage, this was still a very difficult race. These guys did put me under a lot of pressure. I couldn't brake clear. You see there, a bit of a mistake. Onto the main straight we go to end lap number 1. Nissan GTR looking for the move, and eventually a move over to cover it off. Just trying to really preserve my position. I know I could slipstream back past on the Dottinger, but I think it's still best to try to stay ahead. and preserve the position. So we really had to try to complete this race with minimal mistakes, something I was clearly doing in this session up until this point, making lots of mistakes. But eventually, at the end of lap number 2, you can see here, as we come out of the carousel, I was just beginning to break clear of the Nissan, and then by the time we get to the Dottinger, it was over a second, so he wasn't in the slipstream, and I was safe to finally execute a race victory. They made me work for that one, but I was in the Supra, so I should have won really from pole, and I did. But let's choose a different car now. Let's try the Genesis. This car, I think, has been alright in Group 3 recently, and so I decided to give it a go. Now, the first thing I noticed is that it's very stable. It has pretty good acceleration and top speed. I would say its handling is a little bit understeery though, and through the slower corners, one of which we're coming up to now, it does feel a little bit clunky, a little bit heavy and slow, but overall it's a good car. You see a 35.5 at that split, which is pretty good, so I was going into this race with fairly high hopes. So let's jump in from pole position once again. So we're in a familiar position here compared to the previous race where we also started on pole. Weirdly enough, the car started in lean mix 6, and that put me immediately under pressure from the Garello Porsche behind. Luckily enough, I was able to see that and recognise I was in fuel mix 6 straight away. Now, coming up here towards the Bravery corner, the Porsche was challenging me on the outside. I was able to keep him behind for the time being at least. As we progress around onto the Dottinger, now it would be a bit more tricky. The Supra obviously is very good in a straight line. This car isn't too bad, but it would be quite a hard mission to try to keep this Porsche in second place. As he's got the toe now, there's not much I can do. He's going to move to the right hand side, and it's side by side coming up towards, oh my god, Tiergarten, forget the corner name, but here going to have an almighty accident, spinning on the curb, doing a nice little pirouette into the wall. And it was actually remarkably similar to the accident that Lawrence Van Thor had a couple of years ago in exactly the same car. Opposite side though, but a bit of a touch, and he sent spinning round, albeit with far bigger consequences, of course, with damage set to realistic on the real life server. I decided to leave him a comedic message in the chat just as he crashed, and one lap later, bringing home the victory for the boys and girls back at the Hyundai factory. Boom! 2 wins in a row. Pretty happy with that. Genesis is quite a good car here. A little bit understeery, but it is good overall. It's time to hand this over to the GOAT, who actually had a podcast on the F1 website very recently. Scott Speed, there he is. And because he's American, we're going to jump into an American car, the Viper SRT. This could be an awful decision. Well, let's find out, because I don't really have much experience with the Viper. Could be an awful car, could be pretty good. Let's give it a go. Didn't qualify, didn't set a lap, and so we're starting here in 10th position with quite a lot of work to do. It was a dry race, no forecast for rain, at least at the beginning here. Into the back of the McLaren, but we do overtake a Ferrari and move up into 9th. So just really trying to adjust to this car, judge its strengths and its weaknesses. And to be fair, it felt pretty good quite quickly. Now this was a very chaotic race. Look at this. Porsche turning right across the circuit, smashing into a McLaren. We're going to overtake another McLaren here. Already up into 6th position from 10th place on the grid. And strangely, we come up behind a Tesla Model 3. Hey, that's not a Tesla Model 3. What's going on here? That's a Mercedes. So Elon Musk and Tesla clearly having a different strategy with their Tesla models at the moment. But this wasn't a very good strategy. He just went straight on at the chicane, forgetting to turn, which was very much suboptimal. And they should go back to the drawing board and really revise their strategies here, as should that guy. He turns into the wall, turns right on a straight, and he's gone well down the order now. So now, we're looking pretty good here. P4, and we've only just got onto the Nordschleife on lap 1. We are 2 minutes into the race, and that's gone pretty well so far, I must say. And there's this nice little group up in front for first place. Therefore, this point of the race is really just a case of putting together some tidy sectors. And I must say, this Viper is a good little car for this track. feels pretty good actually, feels pretty well planted. Low speed acceleration isn't the absolute best, but overall I think it's not too bad. And as you can see, Scott Speed putting it to incredible use here around the Nordschliefe circuit, catching up with the pack for the top 3 battle, as the Canadian goes a bit wide into the wall, comes back on, and I'm not quite able to fully capitalise. Now looking for another move here, just trying to prize open an opening, and that was a very awkward sentence to say, as we come down the hill into the big braking zone, into the slowest corner on the track, and can be a very awkward little place that, as we're looking for this opening. It isn't quite opening for me, this opening. Drinking game for the word opening. But then here came the opening. The opening opened, and I went into the opening. Before we came through here, I decided, well, I mean, I tried to give him space, but unfortunately he wasn't really having any of it, and there was no opening there on the outside. I drove straight off into the wall. Eventually catching up. Look at this almighty battle for P1. Yes, that's right, 7 of us here in a train fighting for first place. This was quite an incredible race, I must say. Really enjoying this one. Scott Speed in his element as we head towards the back end here of the Nordschleife. Heading down the hill. This is always an awkward little part of the track because the car goes light as you just go over the dip, over the crest, back down the other side. Lots of compression, reaching 150 miles an hour over the curb as we come into this fast right-hander. Got to adjust this one nicely. You can carry a lot of speed through here. 110 miles an hour minimum speed into the left. And this is where things are going to kick off. Look at this, as the guy's up in first and second. Oh my goodness, it's going to kick off a massive chain reaction here. And all of a sudden, I've gone from 6th to 3rd in about 1 second. And as we come round here, this has gone from good to even better. And let's see now, as we head on to the Dottinger, how much better it could get. What on earth is going on? This is the craziest race ever. Let's see what this Viper's all about down the back straight. I've got the toe of the Supras. Here we go, look at this. So we've got a nice little bump draft from the Nissan GTR behind, up to 175 miles an hour in the draft, going past the Supra like it stood still, but then it's trying to come back at me here. It's actually a very close battle, as we're vying for supremacy here of the slipstream of the Supra in front, and I eventually get into second before making a catastrophic error. Look at this. No! 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 No indeed, Super GT. That was a very bad mistake at a very crucial part of the circuit. And now I had a lot of work to do down in P8 trying to catch up with this group. I was 7 seconds off of the lead at this point, and so it was going to be quite a lot of work to try to catch back up and overtake this many cars. But coming through here into Arenberg, these guys decided that they didn't really fancy taking the racing line, smashing into each other. There we go, up into P6. I'll take that quite gladly. It wasn't long before the McLaren in front decided he no longer wanted to remain on the tarmac and drove off the circuit as well. I was then hunting down Tesla Model 3 once again. Elon Musk here with a different strategy for Tesla these days, entering into the Nürburgring Nordschleife races. And on the back straight, I could see the cars in front. I could see the leaders. We did manage to gain 1 position here from a car serving a penalty. But the leaders were barely 3 seconds up the road, and I was just really hoping that they would all crash and end up in the wall and that I would win the race. But that was not going to be the case. It was a valiant effort, catching up from about 8 or 7 seconds down to just 2 seconds at the end. It was going to be a P4. Oh man, P4 after all that. I really gave that my all. 2.3 seconds off the lead at the end. For the next race, we whipped on this beautiful yellow livery, hoping that it would give us the advantage in the next race, which looked like a bit of a deluge of rain. And so, whipping on the Inters for this one, it would certainly make for an interesting occasion. Now, let's see what Scott Speed can do in the wet and damp conditions. Heading towards turn 1 here. There was a real mix of choices in terms of tyre for this. A lot of people going for the hard tyre, a lot of people going for the Inters, because it was on the fringes of wet and dry conditions. And so this would be a very interesting race. Just trying to force my way through on the outside here, past the Mazda, side by side into turn 5 here. Not quite able to get the job fully done, but I think he was on the slicks because he tried to turn right here. You see, he's just got no grip at all and understeers completely off into the gravel. So that was a position gained. Coming down here, we're going to gain one more position from a car going very wide. Once again onto the gravel. So you can see there's a clear difference in grip. Another car sliding off to the right-hand side. And I think these are all the hard tyre runners really struggling with grip in the opening exchanges here in this race. Again, another Porsche sliding off, zero grip seemingly. It's like they're on an ice rink. And up here behind Shadow Realm of all people. So we've got to be extremely careful here. Going past this guy, trying to find our way through onto the back straight. Isn't quite going to happen. But we're going to try to open up an opening into the next opening zone, which is up here at the chicane. And there it is. There is the opening. I go into the opening and take 6th place. Beautiful stuff. And it was a nice little move. I think that guy was on the hard tyres. I had so much more grip going in. And he's gone down a couple of positions. Actually, he's just gone down one position. Right. Let's whip it forward a little bit more. Through Flugplatz. This guy going off in the Supra. The Supra isn't that good in the rain. It's obviously the quickest car in the dry around this track, but in the rain I think it struggles. It doesn't have the traction of the other cars. It can't put down its power as well, and so the Supra is quite vulnerable, I'd say, in these conditions. Although having said that, in front, well, actually it tried to brake and only ends up in the gravel there at Arenberg. Right, coming down the hill. No, where are we? Yeah, we're coming down the hill now. In 4th place, in a very close battle here for the lead. So we've done really well so far, up into 4th. It's going to be up into 3rd here, onto the podium as it stands. So pretty good stuff. We started 12th in this one. So the Inters, that was an inspired decision from the strategy crew back at base. Absolutely incredible choices being made here by the Scott Speed strategy crew. Now here, trying to prize open another opening. So many openings here. Oh my goodness. I can't believe how many openings are opening up in this race. As we're heading up the hill looking for, you guessed it, that opening. And there it is. It's just gonna open up on the left, on the exit. And we're going to go up into 2nd place. Absolutely beautiful. Scott Speed just engineering this to perfection. Doesn't miss a beat, does he, this guy? As now we are up behind the McLaren going into the carousel. The conditions not really changing. I would say that once it does have a big downpour at the start of the race. Oh my goodness, what is going on here? The Brazilian coming back with dive bomb off the Millennium. Nowhere near pulling it off. And then here, I think he tries to let me go back past, and then just steers across. I do not know what he's trying to do. And then finally, he does let me go back past. So I'm going to assume that he made 2 mistakes there. One, going for the dive bomb, and then 2, weirdly turning across when trying to let me past again. It was just very strange behaviour. I do not know what was going on. But eventually, trying to catch back up with this battle for the lead. And I managed to do so by the time we get towards the Dottinger once again. And we're in prime position here to take advantage of the Viper's power down the back straight. We do have the Supra in front, and then a McLaren in the lead and a Porsche in 2nd. So a good array of vehicles on offer here, as Europe's, Japan's and the United States' finest offerings do battle onto the back straight. Here we go then. Let's see who has the top speed prowess down the back straight. Of course the Supra, flying as ever it does. I'm going to try and follow it through here, past the Porsche, which just does not have the power. It has the traction, it has the grip, but the top end is not its strong suit. The Supra here, looking in the toe, pulling back out into the lead. It's unstoppable, that thing. But the Viper is coming at it here. Look at this. 172 miles an hour as we head under the bridge. And I really went for it there, but going for 4th to 2nd is not bad. I'll take it. Going to back off quite early here as we are in wet, dangerous conditions into the Tiergarten section. And the Supra getting a poor exit. We're going to try and get superior traction here. Onto the main straight we go. Into the slipstream. He's not really going to fully defend it. So, at the end of lap 1, at the start of lap 2, we go from second into first. And look at that. Amazing progress here made by Scott Speed. But it's not going to last too long as I go a little bit too deep. Overcook it on the brakes on the way into the first corner, lap number 2. And the Supra goes for the nice little switcheroo. Beautiful stuff. And this, unfortunately, is where this race begins to go slightly downhill. As we do actually go downhill. Because I'm going to brake a little bit too late here. Bit of an ambitious move. And I tried to stop to let him go back in front, but unfortunately we received a tap from behind. And it just slowed us both down. It was a really unfortunate moment that happened. So, big mistake there from Scott Speed. And later on in this race, the pack here for the first place battle began to spread apart a bit. I tried to find my way past this Lexus. Wasn't quite able to do it. It was slightly drier conditions on this second lap. Still slightly wet. And here we just made a bit of a catastrophic error. Carrying a bit too much speed through here. Sliding off onto the grass into the wall. And so that race really went downhill quite quickly. Looking very promising at one point. Before eventually having to settle here for a 5th position. But overall, even though it was a bit of a disaster in the end, I really, really did enjoy that race. It was very good fun. 5th place, you know what? Even though I made a catastrophic mistake there, not once but twice, it was actually a really good race. I think we were actually quite well matched, and you know what? There's a couple of collisions in there, but I think everyone was racing with respect. I think it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. So once again, guys, you know, this 24-hour Nürburgring race in Group 3 with weather, it's just such a good race. I love it. Honestly, one of the best races they've made. But thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.